My name is Eleanor Feith. I was born in St. Vincent's Hospital in Staten Island, New York, July 17, 1938. My grandparents on my mother's side was from Poland. They came over. My grandparents on my father's side, they were born in the United States, but their parents came, my grandmothers on my father's side came in from Holland Dutch, and my grandfather, well, he was born in the United States, but he was like the Lenape Indians. This is what we have been hearing through the centuries. And he would tell us stories and all that stuff. But my mother was born in Bayonne, New Jersey. My father was born in Staten Island, New York. My parents were good people. They loved us a lot. They tried to do everything, as much as they could for us, they did. My mother, she always did try to do everything for us. My father, I was my father's pet when I was young. And Jeannie and Charlie, my brother and my sister, the twins were young then. Everybody was mad because I always got my way. My father adored me. And I adored them. My mother was a seamstress most of her life. My father, he worked at Bethlehem Steel until he had an injury, a big piece of steel that was red hot, fell into his hand and burnt his whole hand. And he had to go to New York Memorial Hospital in New York City. And he was there for a couple of months for them to graft new skin onto his hand. And after that, he became a driver for the postal truck from Staten Island to New York. He drove the mail every single night. He used to work nights. When we were growing up, my father, he didn't make much money driving the trucks and everything like that. And when we all got of age to go to work, he would never accept much money for us. And he didn't charge us everybody charged a little bit for board or rent or something like that for the kids to teach them. But he never did. He just said to me, give me just $10. I think it was every 2 weeks or a month, and that was it. What we did, my brother and I, when things had to be done around the house, like if it was time to wallpaper the walls and everything, we would pay for that and put new flooring in and everything. We did that. And together, Charlie and I used to do these things for them. And that was how we kind of, paid them back, like helped them out. As far as religious, my mother was Catholic and my father was Protestant. And I only learned this the other day talking to my brother. He said, you know why we were raised Protestant? I said, I just figured because Mommy said she was excommunicated when she married Daddy. And he said, no. They said if it was a boy, it would be raised Protestant. If it was a girl, it would be raised Catholic. And my brother was born, so that's how we got to be raised Protestant. My parents' political beliefs at the time were Democrat, because the Democrats then weren't like they are now. My mother, she was the one who would go to vote. My father was not one to go to vote, but he had a say with my mother all the time. And my mother was going to say, they would argue it all the time. And my mother would say, well, regardless, we're going, I'm voting for the Democrat. It was fun. It was fun listening to them, because my mother would always say, but you don't vote. You don't vote, so you don't have no say. We had contact with all our relatives. We were very close growing up with my father's sisters. He had no brothers, just his 4 sisters. And with my mother's sister and brother. And she had a couple of brothers, but one lived in Jersey. We didn't see him that often, but we saw them. But mostly my father's family we were closer with. My mother's parents, they weren't rich. They were poor. And she was never a happy person. And we would go there, and it was always solemn. But she would always try to give us something. And my grandmother would always have a ball to give us to play with when we were there. And she would give us a piece of bread sometimes. If we were hungry, she'd give us a piece of bread. She didn't have a lot of stuff. And we didn't like a piece of bread. We were used to having things on our bread and sandwiches or whatever. So my sister and I, and my brother told me the other day that he did it too, threw it in the woods because there was all woods around her house. So we would walk in the woods, throw the bread in the woods. We figured they should never find it. We didn't know she walks the woods every day, and she found the bread the next day. And we got holy hell when she saw us again. My grandfather, my mother's father, he was great. He loved us. He would take us out because they had gardens and fruit trees and everything, and goats and chickens. And he would take us out there and help us dig a garden, for our garden, to put vegetables in and everything. And my grandmother would take us out to the goats to try to milk and show us how to milk the goats. And we could never do it because our little children's hands could not squeeze the goats the right way. But the goat one day bucked me, because she would tie them around the house, like, you know, and so they could walk and everything. And one day I was walking out on the sidewalk, and there was a goat there, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he come charging and knocked me down. My father's parents, we weren't really close with them. Kind of cool, because even when they were living with us, she loved a certain daughter and those children, and it was put into our face all the time, you know. And one time for Christmas, she was showing us what she bought all them for Christmas, and she never gave us anything. So it was kind of cool, and we left it at that. My mother and father, they had 5 children, and I was the middle child, and there was my brother, who was the oldest, and then my sister Jean, she was the second oldest. Then came I, and then came the twins, Vern and Vivian. Growing up, I was pretty close with my family, my brothers and my brother and my sisters. And we did a lot of things together. My brother, he was an antagonist, so we were always fighting. When he went into the Navy and came out, we became very close. When he came home from the Navy, he wanted to learn how to dance, but he wanted to learn how to do the jitterbug. And we were doing Lindy then, you know, but he wanted to learn how to do the jitterbug with me. So we practiced, and he did the throwing up in the air, over his back, under his legs, and everything. That's where I went. And there was a big dance coming up. He said he was going to go. And I went with my friends, because I always went to them. And he comes in, and the music's playing and everything like that, and we waited until the song was playing. He comes over to me. He says, "You want to dance?" And I said, okay. Nobody knows we're related. And we go out on the floor, and the floor's crowded because everybody goes to the dances. And we started doing the jitterbug. And he started throwing me under his legs and throwing me up in the air and throwing me over his back. The whole floor cleared back, and they all circled around us, and they watched us dance. And we got a standing ovation, not a standing ovation, but they applauded us like crazy. So everybody says, "My God, you know, how did you know how to dance like that and everything?" I said, "I don't know, I just followed him." So they thought we didn't know each other, because he went his way and left and everything, and I went, I was there. So the next dance came, and they all came up to me. They said, are you going to dance with that guy tonight?" I said, I don't know if he's coming. I knew he was coming. And so he shows up about a half hour later, and they're all going, he's here, you're going to go and dance with him? I said, I'm not going to dance with him unless he comes and asks me. And he did. When the song came on and everything, he comes over to me and says, you want to dance? I said, okay. And we went up there, we did the same thing. Same thing happened, the crowd, where they were waiting all night for this to happen, you know. So my girlfriends didn't even know he was my brother, because he was in the Navy all the while. They never met him, you know, from school. So they think this is going on. So finally, after the whole thing, I had to tell them. I told them, that's my brother. I think they were going to kill me, but they laughed. And my grandfather built the house that I grew up in. He had built the house with my mother. My mother helped him. It was a small house. It wasn't big. It had a couple of bedrooms and everything. When we moved there, my grandmother had her bedroom, which later became Jeannie and I's bedroom. And Charlie slept on a cot in the dining room. My father worked nights, so he slept during the day. So when he was working, the bed my mother was in, Jeannie slept with her. And my mother had another twin bed on the other side of the room, and the twins slept together. And that's how we all got in there. Then when my grandmother died very shortly after, Jeannie and I got the bedroom. Charlie went into the Navy, And the twins still stayed in the room with my mother at night. You did that in those days. Kids didn't sleep one in a bed. You didn't have your own bed. You always slept with somebody. We lived in the woods. There was woods surrounding our house. And every year, we would get these big fires that would start off in the swamps, which was quite a ways from my house. And then they would go into the woods. And the fire engines would all Staten Island would be down there. Reporters and fire engines and everything. And the firemen are trying to put the flames out and everything. My father would go out and he would wet down the whole house with the hose while the firemen were taking care of the woods and everything. And they told him, go in the house. They would go in the house. They'd tell my mother, pack up all the stuff. You got to get out of the house. Your house is going to go. And my father's out there, watering down the house and everything like that. And my mother's sitting in the seat with a cigarette in the living room, just smoking. She's a nervous wreck, but she's just calming down. So all of a sudden, the fire comes up towards our house. And all of a sudden, it doesn't hit the house at all, because he had wet it down so much around the house, and the fire went down. They didn't believe it. The firemen didn't believe it. They'd never seen anything like it. Another time, because this used to happen every year, another time I was in school, and I was coming home from school, and my father would be doing all different things to the house. He redid the whole ground, grading of the lawn and everything. And we would run around the house to see what he did new in the house when we were in school. And I'm walking around the house, and on the one side of the house where all the bedrooms were, I looked, and there was a fire. The grass was burnt right up to the foundation of the house. It was all burnt. Everything was burnt. I ran in the house. I woke my father up, and I told him, I says, you have a fire here today? He says, no, what are you talking about? And I showed him. We didn't know how this could have happened. My grandmother told my mother she used to have all these religious pictures in the house, in her house. And when we moved in, she knew my mother didn't want these religious pictures all throughout the house, so she said, put them up in the attic and always keep them. They will protect this house. My mother did that, and she didn't think about it until the fires, and then realized how. And the firemen never could explain how the fires died out at that point. And we always thought, we realized it was those pictures that protected the house. Couldn't think of anything else. Growing up, my mother used to read us nursery rhymes all the time, and so we would memorize them and everything, and we had fun doing that. My father, he loved to sing, and he would buy, in those days you bought music's, what do you call them? The pages with all the music songs, like the songs all written on it. And he would buy that, and he would come home, and we would sit on his lap, and when he would open it up, and we would all sing the songs together. And that's why I love music so much today. My radio is on all the time. Money was tight. You know, we had things. We always had enough food. Oh, God. My aunt, who was wealthy, she used to always say, my God, you have so much food in this house, because she would come for dinner or something on Sunday. But that was my father's thing. He figured, we have to have food. All right, we might not be the best dressed people in town, you know, but we always had good clothes. It wasn't a lot that we could have choices. And I remember my mother, she always tried to give us whatever she could possibly give us, because she worked. I remember one time we went to the shopping center, and we were walking down the street, and we stopped at a jewelry store. And she says, come on, let's go in. And I said, Mom, we can't afford anything here. What do you want to go in for? She says, let's just look. My mother was a great, window shopper. So we walked in, and the guy said, can I help you? And she says, yeah, what do you have in ruby? Ruby rings. And that's my birthstone. And the guy said, oh, I have, and he showed us the ruby rings. And she says, which one do you like? She said to me. And I can't say anything to her in front of the man. You can't afford this. And he told her how much it was and everything, and she bought it. And I'm thrilled, because this never happened to me before. We got things like that. And then she said to the guy, what about your fountain pens? Let me see your fountain pens. And you buy fountain pens in the jewelry store. They were always too expensive, like, you know. And he showed her the fountain pens, and she bought me a fountain pen. And she said, "Happy birthday." And then we walked down the street, and we came to Lerner's. And she said, "Let's just go look." We walked in there. And I'm looking at the clothes, and she's looking at the clothes. And I showed her this dress. I said, "Isn't this pretty?" I never got dresses like that. And she says, "Yeah." She said, "Why don't you try it on?" And oh, I fell in love with it. And she took it, and she bought it for me. And she said, "Happy birthday." We never gave birthday presents. You know, to avoid birthday parties. You know, she always would make a cake, but it wasn't exchanging presents or anything like that. We kind of, you know, and this was, I was in high school at the time. And so I graduated high school when I was 15. So it had to be around that age, 14, 15. Growing up, my mother worked. So a lot of times, summertime, we were home from school. And we took over the house. And I would do everything. I would clean the house. I would take care of the twins. I would feed them. I would make supper. I would do the wash, hang them up, everything I would do. I would really take care of the twins, almost like as if they were my own children. And going to school, when Jeannie was there, we would both come home. Jeannie got home earlier than I would, and my father would always write what we were going to have that night for supper and the recipe, how to make it. And every night we would read it and make the supper, whether it was Chinese food we would make or steak, and it wasn't a steak like you think, you know, filet mignon. It was like those little tiny steaks, you know, and all the meals we would have to make, and we would make them. And then when my mother came home, we would eat it. My father would get up, and we would all sit down and eat. There were a lot of recipes that we have brought forward. I still make this to this day from that time. My father would give us the recipes. My father didn't cook, but he would give us the recipes and write them all out for us. And one of them was sauerbraten, which everybody in our family loved. This one Christmas came, and we didn't have the money for a tree. And my father, he felt very bad about it. He kind of stayed in his room. He didn't come out. And I tried to do something, and I learned how to make this one meal in cooking class in school. It was called tuna and peas on toast. And I figured out the kids didn't eat it, to make that, and they all loved it and everything. And then the kids went out walking. They decided to go walking Christmas morning. And they walked up the street, and that guy who was selling the Christmas trees the day before, I guess Christmas Eve, they all went, Christmas Eve, he had to go home. What was he going to do with his trees? They're not going to be one. He threw them in the woods. And when the twins were walking, they found all these Christmas trees in the woods. They looked at them all, and they picked the best one. It was the best one we ever had. They dragged it home, and they brought it in the house, and we called my father and everything, and we all got together and decorated the whole tree as if it was Christmas Eve and we were decorating the trees. Because in those days, you decorated the trees on Christmas Eve. You didn't do it a week before, you know, and we decorated the whole tree. It was a beautiful tree. And we didn't have much gifts under the table. We didn't have really anything as far as gifts are concerned. And we were all older, so we all knew about Santa Claus and everything. And but it turned out to be a really nice Christmas because we had the tree. And but that was, I guess you'd say, it was really a sad time, you know, but it turned into a good time. Where we were living on Auburn Avenue, there was only 2 houses on the whole block. And it was us, and there was another house up the street. And they were there for years, just as long as my mother's house has been there too. So it was really woods all around us. And we grew up playing in those woods. We knew them inside and out. And it was a quiet neighborhood. But it was a good neighborhood because we used to go outside at night in the summertime and sit on the front porch with our shorty pajamas on and not worry about the people looking at us or anything because there weren't anybody there. But New York City at that time was the biggest city we'd seen when we were kids. When my father had hurt his hand in Bethlehem Stale, he was in the hospital for a couple of months, and we used to go up to the city. We used to take the boat, the ferry, and then take the train, and then go up to the hospital. And as kids, Jeannie and I weren't allowed to be up in the room with my father, so we had to stay down in the lobby. One time, my mother, she felt sorry for us. She bought a bag of grapes, and Jeannie and I were sitting on the sofa in the lobby, and we were shooting grapes back and forth to each other, and we would eat them. And she would shoot me a grape or something. And one time she shot me a grape, and she was being smart aleck. I'm going to say smart ass. Smart aleck. And it went past me, and the woman was sitting there, this very richy woman with this big fur coat, and the grape ran up her coat and down again. And we couldn't stop laughing, and we didn't want her to know about it. And she turned around and she looked at us. But we weren't allowed to go see my father, but on the way, when we left, when my mother came down and we left and we walked down, we were able to wave to him. He was like on the 6th floor, and we were able to wave to him from the street. He would always come to the window. When I went to school, we didn't have to go to kindergarten, so I started right with the 1st grade. Halfway through the 1st grade, the principal came to my mother. She went home to my mother. They used to come to our house, and she came to the house and she told my mother she wanted to skip me for the rest of the grade and put me in the 2nd grade. My mother thought, well, this is great, okay, fine. So they did that, and I went to the 2nd grade. Halfway through the 2nd grade, she came to the house again, and she told my mother, she's too smart for that class. We want to skip her to the next grade. So I went into the 3rd grade. So I'm in the 3rd grade now, and I'm halfway through the 3rd grade, and the principal goes to my mother. She comes to the house, and she says, we want to skip her again. And my mother said, no. You're taking her too much out of her age group, and I don't think it's good for her socially. So they didn't skip me. So I went through school. That was it. I didn't skip no more. When we moved, and I went to a new school, and I had to take a school bus, and I had my twin sisters with me, and I took care of them. And in school, I took them to school. They were in the 1st grade or something, or the 2nd grade, I can't remember, 3rd grade, whatever. And they got on the school bus, and they didn't know better. They just went and took a seat. What we didn't know is these boys were in school. They were bullies, and they wouldn't let nobody sit in the back of the bus or take their seats that they wanted, and you never knew which seat they wanted. So the twins got out earlier than me. They got on the bus, and they went and sat down. And then the boys got on. I didn't know it, but then I got on the school bus. And when I got on the school bus, I saw them picking on my sisters. And I said, what's going on here? And they said, they're sitting in my seat. I said, is this assigned seats? And everybody said, no, there's no assigned seats. So they kept picking on my sisters to get out of the seat, and they started pulling them and everything. And I said, don't pull my sisters out of the seat. Leave them alone. And they said, who do you think you are? And everything like that. I said, I'll show you who I am if you keep this up. And so they kept it up. They started pulling my sisters out of the seat by their collar and everything. 4 boys, I took them down and beat the shit out of them. Usually the school bus driver, when there's a fight, I found out later on, when there's a fight on the bus, he stops the bus, he kicks anybody who's in the fight off the bus. They have to walk home. And there's a distance. That day, he looked in the mirror, and he never stopped the bus. And he laughed when the guys were going off the bus. The next day in school, they have the big lunchroom and they use that for the bus people. And the boys sat on that side, the girls sat on this side. And the teacher came over to me, and because she was a monitor and she came over to me and she said, I heard about yesterday. And I said, what? I didn't know she knew anything about what happened. She says, I heard you had a situation on the bus. I said, oh, yeah. I thought she was going to yell at me or something. She says, well, the boys over there, and they're carrying on, and they're, you know, they won't listen to me. She says, so I want you to go over there. So I got up, I went over to the boys, and I said to them, and as I'm going over there, all the kids, all the boys, their friends are going, oh, like, they're going to get beat up again, you know. And I went over there and I said to them, look, shut up, sit down. I don't want to hear no more noise from you. They were older than me. And I went back to my seat, they sat there, and then the teacher came over to me, she says, thank you. They couldn't live it down after that. They were in the 8th grade. Luckily, they were going to graduate and get out. But they were gone. I was in grammar school. Maybe it was when my girlfriend and I started hanging around, Marilyn and I started hanging around together. And we were always hanging out. And then the boys started coming into our lives. And they said, I'm sorry, they said, you want to play baseball? So we said, okay. So we did. My father taught me how to play baseball and everything. So I said, no, okay. And so they took us to the field, and we were there, and they gave us this one little kid to play with us. I'll be on our team, and the big boys were on the outfield. And they kept joshing us all the time. They were putting us down. And the little boy got up to play and bat, and he couldn't bat. And then my girlfriend got up to bat, and she couldn't bat. And I got really mad at them. But they didn't know about my father or anything like it there, what he taught us. And I got really mad at them. And he pitched the ball to me. And I whammed it completely out of the park into the road on the way down the other end. Well, that story went around town. That kids started coming in to the boys wanting to meet the girl who hit the ball out of the park. But they never said anything to us again. And in high school, I became a pitcher of our team, because we didn't have competitive sports then. And we played at Dorton Gym. But my father taught me how to pitch. And we had to play, we played different teams, and we had to play this black team, all black girls. And they were tough. They were tough girls. They got up to bat, and I struck them out 1, 2, 3, left and right. They lost. We won. After it was over, I thought I was going to be beat up. And they came over to us in a group, came over to me in a group. And I said, uh-oh, here it's going to go. And they said, how do you pitch? And I said, what do you mean? He said, how did you get us all out? Nobody's ever done that to us. They wanted me to show them how. And I told them how to do the slow pitch. My father says, everybody, it was softball. You wind up and you look, you're going to throw that ball fast, but then you let it go slow. And it goes, they think it's going to come fast, but it goes a little slow, and it goes right down. And they swing at it, and they swing at nothing. And I showed them how to do it. They were my best friends after that. They were so happy I showed them how to do it, and they took it to their, not in school, but, you know, when they played at home. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a ballerina growing up. My girlfriend in my first school I went to, she took ballet dancing, and my mother couldn't afford it, so I just did it myself. I wanted to be, then that was short-lived, and then I wanted to be a school teacher. I wanted to be a school teacher. That was my dream. And then I went to school, and when I went to PS 30, when I was in the 5th grade, when I moved there, the kindergarten teacher, she was pregnant, and she needed somebody to come down and watch and take care of the kids. And one of the girls in the class used to do that. She asked me to come with her one day, and the teacher liked the way I handled the kids so much. She got rid of the other girl, and she kept me, and every day at 2 o'clock I had to go down and take the kids outside, read them stories, or do things with them, or show them different things. And I figured, oh, this is great. I really like to do this. And it happened with the 3rd grade. I was a monitor for the 3rd grade, and I had my twin sisters in it. And the teacher didn't show up when they were supposed to bring them into school. So the other teacher, the monitor, told me to bring the kids into the classroom and stay with them. So I went in there, and I said to them, because the teacher didn't show up, I started teaching them history and everything. So this was my dream until I got into high school. And then I used to design draw clothing, different designs of clothing. And I enjoyed doing that. And my father, one day, he saw what I did. He says, look, how would you like to go to college and then go to school for designing? He says, because I see what you're designing, and they're good. And I thought about it. I figured, well, I'll go to college, but how is he going to afford college? He says, I'll find a way. And then he told me, but there's one thing you have to do. I said, what's that? He says, you have to go to an all-girls school. You don't tell a girl who's in high school that she's got to go to an all-girls school. When at that point in time, they're noticing boys and everything. And I said, I can't do that. I don't want to go to an all-girls school. He said, well, that's the choice you have to make. And I didn't. So I didn't go to college. And I never drew again. I drew pictures and I painted and everything, but I never went after that. My mother put a damper on that for me. She told me, Eleanor, she says, if you design clothing, you gotta sew it. You gotta sew that up so they see what it looks like. And my mother, she sewed for a living, and that to me, it kept her from being home with us, and I wanted nothing to do with sewing. So if I had to sew, which I found out later on I didn't have to sew, I stopped it right then and there, and I never went further with it, and that's why I stopped drawing with it and everything. No regrets. I think my life was good. I went to work in New York. I worked in Manufacturers Trust as a clerk, and I left there, and I went to Kroll Reynolds, and I worked as a private secretary, and I enjoyed that, and then I got married. When I was a teenager, it was one part of my life. It's kind of sad, kind of dumb, but it's me. I was watching television. Me and my sisters were watching television, and my brother walked in the house, and he came over and walked right over to the TV and changed the channel. And I said, what are you doing? We're watching TV. And he said, well, I want to see this. And I said, no, and I turned the channel back. So we started a little fight there. And my father comes in when he heard us. And he said, what's going on? And I said, we're watching TV, and he came in, and he's turning the channel. He won't let us watch. Well, my father, for the first time in his life, stuck up for him, and not me. And that crushed me. And I got so angry, I stopped talking to my brother, and I stopped talking to my father. And my father's stubborn like me, and he went along with it. He stopped talking to me. So if we had to say anything, we went through my mother. We didn't talk to each other. And it took until I was going out with my husband, and we were going up the street. My father was standing there for the bus to go to work. And he said to me, you want to pick up your father? And I said, all right, I don't know how it's going to go. And I stopped and I said, you want to ride? And my father looked at me. He says, okay. Got in the car, and then we started talking again. But it was about a year or so later. So sad, dumb, but we were both stubborn. Everybody told us that. But got to realize I was my father's pet, and he always stood up for me. And for that time, for him to go against me at that time, it crushed me. Yeah, you learn. You live and you learn. My mother was the mother who wanted us to know everything. So she would sit us on the bed at night with her and tell us, Jeannie and Aunt Jean and I, excuse me, you don't know, you're not supposed to be here. She told Jean and I about the birds and the bees. Everything you'd want to know, we knew everything. She told us what to look out for. We told us the whole story. So we were pretty, smart about that. In fact, the guys we started going out with them when I was working and everything. We'd go out with the guys. It went around town real fast. You're not going to get anything from these two girls. I was hanging around with Paula at the time, and they won't even kiss you on the first date. That was our rule. Paula and I made that up. You know what? Let's make a rule. We don't kiss on the first date. These guys are going to know what we're like, and they're not going to try anything. Well, they did. They always tried. Always tried. Never got any place because we got that schooling at a very young age. And to see ourselves pregnant and with a child before we were even married, we couldn't see it. Well, again, in those days, very few people was that promiscuous. They didn't. So it wasn't like today. It wasn't like today. Okay, I met my husband through my girlfriend's husband who worked with him. And she decided to bring us together to go out. And we got together, and I noticed that he was shorter than me. And I never went out with guys shorter than me. And I said, this is not going to work. And so he said, I ate supper already, so we didn't eat. And because she had invited us for supper. And I wasn't in the mood to eat supper, so he said, well, how about we go for a ride? So we went for a ride, and we went out to the beach. And we parked the car, and they decided they're going to leave us alone. Now this girl, I was my friend in school. She wanted to get married. Her mother pestered her to get married at an early age. Well, she thought I had to have a boyfriend and I had to get married. So I kept ignoring the whole thing. So now they leave us and they figure, oh, we're going to get together. So I, unbeknownst to Bob, decided to make out like crazy. So we were kissing it up like a storm, and he's going, God, you're a good kisser. Mm-hmm. My girlfriend's looking, and I wanted her to see this, to leave me alone and not, you know, she must have thought I couldn't get a boyfriend, and I had dates and everything, but she thought this because I didn't see her that often. So when she come back into the car, now Bob is like, whew, this is a good one, you know. He's in love. He told me he knew he was going to marry me that day. And but after that, yeah, we started going out. And in fact, our first date was down here in Lakewood. Right here, they had a zoo, like a little animal zoo there. And we took pictures right on Lakewood Lake, Lake Carasalgo. We got the pictures still yet. And that was it. It started the whole thing. And one day he had to go away for summer camp, and my father said to me, why do you keep going to the mailbox? Because he would send me a letter all the time. And I said, I was just looking for a letter. And he said to me, are you in love with him? That's when it hit me. I just thought, you know, this is great. I love him. He was such a caring person. You don't meet a guy like that. You don't meet them that caring. They don't care. Usually they care more about themselves. And I couldn't get over that. He was very, very caring and everything. And that was it. That was it for me. And we decided to get married. It took 2 years because we wanted to make sure we wanted to do what we had to do, and we saved money. We made sure we put our paychecks away and saved money for our wedding and everything, because we paid for our own wedding. And then I got the best husband in the world. And to this day, I feel that way. I couldn't live without him. Going out with my husband at the time, we just talked about everything. And all of a sudden we got into talking about marriage, getting married. And it just became part of the conversation that he wanted to marry me, and I wanted to marry him. And then we started from there, and we started building up on what we were going to do, save the money, and where we were going to have the wedding. And it just kind of, he didn't get down on his knees or anything like that. It wasn't done like that. It was just like a thing we both agreed on and wanted. Our wedding ceremony, okay, well, we paid for the hall, we paid for everything, and we had a blast. We had a lot of fun. We left the hall, went home to get our suitcase, and we had ice skates thrown over our shoulder and broke the damn glass in the door on the way out. So, but yeah, our wedding was fantastic. We had a good time. We had everybody there. We paid, like I said, we paid for everything. And then we left, and we went to Jersey, and we didn't even have reservations any place. We just stopped at a motel, and we pulled into the motel, and we got the room, and there was so much going, you would have thought it was an orgy going on in the whole hotel place. The noise, the music, the everything, and the girls running and the guys. And I said to Daddy, I don't want to stay here. I don't like it. The lights, everything is so. So he had to go to the room and ask for his money back because we were leaving. And we left. And we drove till we found a nice place, and we stayed there. Yeah, because of me. If I had to give advice to anybody, planning to get married or finding somebody to marry, I would say, be honest with them. Be honest and talk. Talk openly about everything that bothers you, that you like, dislike, because you'll be surprised when you find out the answers to something you don't like, and you leave then. Don't go into it hoping it's going to be better. It won't. And not only that, it's never 50-50. It's always 100-100. You give everything to each other. My children, 2 of them were born in Staten Island, New York, Bobby and Gary. They put you out. I had anesthesia. They put you out completely, and then they wake you up and they tell you you have a child. Then we moved down here to Jersey, and Karen and Paul was born. And it was completely different. They give you a shot in the back. It's called an epidural. And I was awake through the whole birth. And when Paul was born, and I watched him being born, was the most exciting time of all my, the first 2 I didn't know, and I was so excited to watch him being born. I'll never forget that day. And Karen was born the same way, epidural. And I told people, you have no pain, and you watch the whole birth and everything. It's exciting. I thought it was great. All my children were different, completely different. I had Bobby, who was the quiet, loved to read, loved to, in fact, when I had to punish him, it was go outside. He hated to go outside. If I had to stay in that, for the other kids who loved to go outside, I used to say, you got to get in the house. And they hated it. So I had to treat Bobby that way. Gary was a go-getter. He liked sports. He liked to get out there with everything. And you had to kind of pull Gary back every now and then. He was always getting into trouble. Not bad trouble, but trouble. And Paul was, well, he was the angel. Like, he was so good. He was so accommodating. He was so sweet. And sometimes I worried about him. And I guess in time he was having problems, and I didn't want kids picking on him because he was thin and he was, small, and he was kind of quiet. And we gave him the karate, and that was the best thing I think we ever did. And music. We gave him music. He had a talent for music, and I bought a piano for him. It was a second-hand piano, and I'll never forget this day as long as I live. And we brought it to the house, and I was sitting in the chair, and he started playing the piano, and I swear to God, it sounded like music. It wasn't kids banging on a piano. I fell asleep in the chair listening to him. And I said to my husband, we got to get him lessons. And that's how that started, and he became great in the music. Then there was Karen. Karen was the girl, that I could go shopping with, and she was always there, and she tried to please her mother. And then, of course, you get to those magical ages at high school where she wants to be the big girl, and she doesn't want her mom telling her anything. So you go through that with all the kids. But she was the girl my husband always wanted. I said, thank God, because I couldn't keep trying like this. When I got married, I thought, you have to raise boys really tough. You have to be a sergeant. And Bobby was born, and I would be a sergeant, and him telling him, he can't do this or he can't do that. Well, he was so small, I couldn't do that. I'm saying he's just a child. And it changed. And I found out the more you love a child, the more you get back. And it was something I tried to do. I tried to discipline. Sometimes it was stupid, the way I disciplined you guys, but sometimes it was harsh, or you thought it was harsh. I remember when Paul did something. I can't even remember what he did. And I was very angry at him for doing it. And he took it in stride, and I got mad, and I sent him outside. I told him to go outside. It was cold outside. And I sent him out there, and I said, go. And Karen, his sister, is saying, but Ma, it's cold out there. He doesn't have a jacket. Well, I wanted to teach him a lesson to show him it could be long. Right now he's thinking it's going to be a long time. What am I going to do? I'm freezing out here. So he wouldn't do what he did ever again. And all she did was pester me all the time he was out. He was out there for not even 5 minutes, and she had me going. So finally I said, okay, call him in now. My favorite animal is a dog. We had a dog named Heather. Fantastic dog. My favorite candy is any. Chocolate, anything. My favorite color is pink, and you can have that verified by my grandchildren, because I used to buy them pink, 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 and they said, Grandma, we hate pink now, and I know you love it. That's my favorite color. My favorite, it's a new flavor of ice cream that I love. It's called chocolate chip cherry. Yeah, I love that. That's a new one. Used to like butter pecan. My favorite fruit is peaches. I love peaches, fresh from the orchard. My favorite movie is Grease. I like to watch that. My favorite season is summer. I love the warm weather. My favorite vegetable is, potatoes, but I like broccoli. My husband and I both have a favorite song. We picked the song for our wedding song, and it was the 12th of Never. It was sung by Johnny Mathis. And it's been with us all our lives. Every time we say to each other, I love you, and I'll say, I love you more. And he'll say, no, I love you till the 12th of never. And it still stays with us. That's our favorite song. You ask how much I love you. Well, I'll explain. I love you, oh my darling, like roses need rain. You asked how much I love you. I'll tell you true. Until the 12th of never, I'll still be loving you. Until the 12th of never, I'll still be loving you. The actual worst thing that ever happened in my life was when my son passed away. He had some sort of infection. It was so bad he had to lose his leg. And he was in a hospital for a couple of months, so we used to go see him in Pennsylvania every single day. And then he was able to come home, and he came here to live because he was divorced. And we took care of him. And we was hoping he would get better. They were testing him for a prosthetic leg and everything. And then all of a sudden his other leg started going. And the doctor told him that he would have to have that amputated. And I think it was more than he could handle, because he changed after that. He knew. I didn't. He knew he was going to go. It was on my other son's birthday. He had to go to dialysis at 11 o'clock. And he went, but he was tired that day. When he woke up, we had to wake him up. And when I left, the nurse came, and she found him sleeping in the bedroom. And she woke him up, and she said, Bob, let's wake up. Tired? You didn't sleep? And he said, I don't know, I'm just tired. The girl started hooking him up to the dialysis machine, and she talked, and she was teasing. She said, I know you hate Monday morning, Bob, so how you feeling today? He didn't answer her, so she says, I turned around, and there he was with his chin down on his neck and out completely. So I went over there, and I tried to wake him up, but he wouldn't wake up. And that was it. And then they took him to the hospital, trying to revive him on the way and everything. And my daughter and I were shopping, and my husband called up and said, come to the hospital, but don't tell Mom what it's about. And my daughter couldn't tell me. They put us in this room. They had us in this room for about 15 minutes and waiting for Daddy to show up, and he didn't show up. And finally another nurse came and said, what are you waiting for? We said, we're waiting for so-and-so. So she goes, oh, she's just come with me, she says. And as we walked out of the room, she turned to me, she said, I'm so sorry for your loss. And I looked at her, I said, what loss? What are you talking about? And she said, oh, I'm so sorry. And she ran ahead of me because she knew and then I didn't know. And I started going after her. And Karen, I said, Karen, what is she talking about? And we ran to the room. And when I walked in, he was there. And I was trying to wake him up. But he wouldn't wake up. That time that I lost my son, it was very hard. So anybody who does lose a child, you never get over it. It stays with you forever. A parent dies, you know, you expect it, and then it lessens. But with a child, it never goes away. It lives with you forever. I am so honest, it's pathetic. My husband, he keeps saying to me, you are so honest. How do you do it? I can't lie. And when I believe when things are right, that's what you should go with. And when people do things to me, to hurt me, I will stop talking to them because I feel I'm going to say things that I'll regret saying. So I stop talking to people. And I can stay not talking to people for a long time because I feel when they talk to me like that, there's no respect, and what they say to me, they have to be honest and talk to me. But if they try to hurt me, that's my bad point. You have to be honest with me, and I'll be honest constantly with you, but you have to be honest with me. There's a lot of single moments in my life that was, you know, I remember, but it's life. It's, you know, your parents, the way they treat you, and things that happen when you get a job. It's a lot of memorable moments. I like, yes, going on vacation. When I went on vacation with my kids and everything, I had a grand time just being with them. I love to hear stories about them, what they're doing in their life and their kids and everything. Those are memorable moments. I love my grandchildren. I love to hear stories. I love to see them. Those are great times for me. My husband keeps saying to me, he doesn't understand it, I attract people. I attract people, and I attract friendly people. And I can be walking in a mall, and people come up to me, and they smile, and they talk to me, and I don't know why. I think I'm a friendly person. I think I'm an honest, friendly person, which is hard to get, a person that's always honest. Will I lie? I don't call it a lie when I don't want to hurt your feelings. If I had advice to give to the future generation, I think I would tell them to be caring, loving, and open to anything. And don't criticize until you know the whole thing. Don't try to be negative. Just be open to everything. And you'll be surprised how many times things you think you hate, but you find out a little bit more about them, and there's nothing to hate there. I always wanted my grandchildren to know me as a grandmother who cared and loved having them around. I had a grandmother who didn't, and I had a grandmother who couldn't. So I never had it. And going to school, I saw kids who had grandmothers like that. And I said, that's what I want to be. So if they could remember me as going out and buying clothes with them and going into dressing rooms and all these things, if they could remember that, that's good.